Tycoons fall, sanctuaries rise, when greed meets grace amidst sabotage. In a world dominated by profit and power, what happens when a cold, empire-obsessed tycoon suddenly faces an impossible choice: save innocent lives from destruction, or protect the entire kingdom he built? An unexpected act of compassion will drag him into a battle for survival not only with ruthless adversaries but with his own former self. Has a seemingly insignificant encounter ever completely shifted the course of your life? Sometimes, the most profound changes begin with the smallest seeds of empathy. If this story touches your heart, please like this post, subscribe for more inspiring narratives, comment below with your thoughts, and share it widely to spread the message of hope and kindness. Lysander Vane, a name that echoed with a chilling reverence through the glass and steel canyons of global finance, was less a man and more a force of nature. His personal domain, a sprawling triplex penthouse suspended precariously atop the Lumina Tower, a beacon of austere modernity overlooking Manhattan's Central Park, offered dizzying, unrestricted vistas that stretched from the glittering ribbon of the Hudson River to the distant, hazy shimmer of the Atlantic horizon. Each dawn, before the city's ceaseless pulse truly stirred, Lysander's day began with an almost sacred ritual, a custom-blended, single-origin coffee, meticulously prepared by his chief of staff, Cassandra Thorne. Cassandra, a woman of formidable intellect and an almost preternatural discretion, navigated the labyrinthine demands of his life with an unnerving efficiency that often seemed wasted on managing his dizzying array of global indulgences. From his colossal desk, a monolith forged from polished titanium and rare African wenge wood, Lysander commanded Vane Conglomerate, a multinational behemoth whose strategic maneuvers sent seismic shocks through industries ranging from cutting-edge quantum computing to the volatile markets of rare earth minerals. His afternoons might spiral into a whirlwind flight on his bespoke Vortex Gulfstream G900 to Zurich for a secretive merger negotiation, or a high-octane weekend in the gilded enclaves of Monaco, where his custom-built racing yacht, the Obsidian Fury, awaited, primed for a regatta that left rival magnates trailing in its foamy wake. Lysander wasn't merely wealthy. He was the very embodiment of new money, acquired through a blend of audacious foresight, ruthless market exploitation, and an almost preternatural ability to predict the ebb and flow of global capital. His reputation preceded him, a man who quantified everything, from human potential to ecological impact, in terms of pure, unadulterated profit margins. Empathy, he believed, was a statistical anomaly, a weakness in the market algorithm of life. His philanthropy, when it did occur, was a cold, calculated exercise in strategic brand enhancement or a meticulously optimized tax deduction. Donations were funneled exclusively into elite research institutions or prestigious art galleries, places where his name would be etched in polished marble, ensuring a legacy of intellectual patronage, never whispered in the gritty trenches of genuine need. Charity, Cassandra, he'd once declared, his voice a low, resonant purr, like a contented predator, is merely a more elaborate form of public relations, a necessary expenditure for maintaining societal optics. It offers a fleeting return, but never one I truly pursue for its own sake. This cynical mantra had been hammered into him by his late father, a self-made industrialist whose singular lesson was that weakness was a luxury only the poor could afford, and sentimentality, a fatal flaw. His family ties, thin and fragile to begin with, had long since frayed into non-existence. His younger sister, Dr. Serafina Vane, a brilliant but stubbornly idealistic astrophysicist devoted to unraveling the mysteries of dark matter at the Event Horizon Institute, had tried repeatedly to bridge the chasm between them. Their last painful conversation, nearly 7 years prior, still echoed in the sterile silence of his penthouse. Lysander, you're building a fortress of money and power around yourself, but it's an empty, echoing tomb. What will your true legacy be? A mountain of gold or a void where compassion should be? He dismissed her words then, with a dismissive wave of his hand, as the naive ramblings of an academic dreamer. Yet, they, like Cassandra's occasional, almost imperceptible glances of concern, had begun to chip away at the meticulously constructed indifference that shielded his core. Beneath the polished veneer of his meticulously crafted success, a subtle, corrosive ennui had begun to gnaw at Lysander. The exhilarating thrill of the deal had become dulled, the taste of victory bland and fleeting. The lavish parties, once intoxicating symphonies of power and indulgence, now felt like hollow charades, populated by sycophants and fleeting shadows. He'd often find himself staring out at the constellations of city lights below, a strange, expansive emptiness mirroring the vast, impersonal space of his penthouse, a void that even his immense wealth couldn't fill. Cassandra, ever perceptive, had once discreetly left a small, leather-bound volume of Taoist philosophy on his desk. He hadn't opened it, but the gesture, so uncharacteristic, had registered. His past was a blur of ambition, cutthroat achievement, and the systematic suppression of any genuine connection to anything beyond his own formidable will. He harbored a faint, almost forgotten memory of a dog, a small, black and white terrier mix named Echo, from his childhood in a quiet suburban town outside Chicago. Echo had been his silent confidant, a small, furry beacon of unconditional affection, a memory he'd painstakingly buried beneath layers of strategic thinking, emotional armor, and the relentless pursuit of power. His primary rival, a formidable conglomerate known as Umbra Corporation, led by the exceptionally cunning, ethically ambiguous, and notoriously ruthless Valerius Cale, was a constant, predatory shadow. Cale was not merely a competitor. He was a true nemesis, relentlessly pursuing hostile takeovers of vain conglomerates' key assets, turning every market fluctuation into a high-stakes, personal war. Lysander thrived on this relentless game, his mind a labyrinth of predictive algorithms and complex financial manipulations, always several steps ahead. However, a recent, unexpected setback had bruised his formidable ego. A highly publicized corporate espionage scandal at Vane Conglomerate, subtly and brilliantly orchestrated by Umbra Corporation's chief strategist, Octavia Blackwood, had led to a significant dip in his company's stock value and a barrage of devastating negative press. The media, fueled by meticulously leaked and manipulated documents, later proven to be fabrications by Umbra, painted Lysander as a ruthless, perhaps even illegal, operator, a titan with feet of clay. This unprecedented public scrutiny, this erosion of his carefully cultivated image of untouchable power, left him feeling vulnerable and intensely frustrated. He was fighting battles on too many fronts, and for the first time in years, the sheer volume of the fight felt exhausting. One late evening, after a particularly bruising negotiation that saw Umbra Corporation snatch a lucrative quantum computing patent out from under him, Alexander found himself pacing his penthouse, the vastness of the space amplifying his simmering rage. The defeat felt bitter, sharper and more personal than usual. He flicked on the enormous display, intending to review market data, but instead, it was tuned to a local news segment. A young, earnest reporter was doing a live cross from a small, dilapidated animal shelter in a remote, forgotten part of upstate New York. Its name, barely visible on a faded, weather-beaten sign, read Emberwood Haven. The reporter spoke of dire circumstances, a recent, draconian municipal budget cut, an overwhelming, unprecedented influx of abandoned and abused animals, and the shelter's imminent, inevitable collapse. Lysander scoffed, his hand instinctively reaching for the remote, but a close-up shot flashed across the screen, a tiny, trembling kitten, its eyes wide with raw terror and profound hunger, shivering uncontrollably in a cramped, rusted wire cage. Something in its profound vulnerability, its desperate, voiceless plea, pierced his carefully constructed defenses, bypassing the algorithms of his mind to strike a resonant chord within his hardened heart. It was an unsettling echo of Echo's innocent gaze, a long-forgotten chord struck from the deepest recesses of his buried past. He didn't change the channel. The segment ended with an emotional, tearful plea from the shelter manager, a woman named Elara Reed, her voice cracking with desperation, her face a roadmap of exhaustion and unwavering love. Lysander felt a strange, unfamiliar twist in his gut, a sensation far removed from the cold, sterile calculations of the market. He dismissed it, with a practiced cynicism, as a momentary weakness, a fleeting, irrational empathy, but the image of the kitten, and Elara Reed's raw, heartfelt plea, lingered, stubbornly refusing to fade into the background noise of his opulent life. 1,000 miles away, nestled precariously amidst the rugged, ancient forested peaks of the Blackwood Peaks, in a remote, forgotten corner of Lyra County, upstate New York, lay Emberwood Haven. It was less a haven and more a desperate, ramshackle collection of repurposed logging barns and makeshift enclosures, battling tirelessly against the relentless encroachment of nature and the crushing weight of human indifference. The crisp mountain air, usually invigorating, hung heavy with the pervasive sense of damp earth, decaying wood, and the quiet, almost palpable despair of too many forgotten animals. A recent, brutal winter storm, dubbed the Great Freeze by locals, had brought down several massive, ancient trees, one of which had crashed directly onto a key section of the main kennel roof, tearing a gaping hole and utterly compromising their already fragile, antiquated heating system. A subsequent, virulent outbreak of canine distemper, exacerbated by the sub-zero temperatures, compromised ventilation, and severely overcrowded conditions, had swept through the shelter like wildfire, leading to several heartbreaking, agonizing losses and a mounting pile of astronomical veterinary bills they simply couldn't pay. Their old, unreliable artesian well pump had also just given out, leaving them desperately reliant on expensive, often delayed, deliveries of bottled water for days, sometimes weeks, at a time. The nearest town, Emberwood Falls, was small and struggling itself, its local resources stretched thin, its community battered by the harsh economy. Eleanor Reed, the sanctuary's manager, was a woman whose face was a roadmap of resilience, etched with exhaustion, yet illuminated by an unwavering, almost spiritual, love. Her once fiery red hair was now a wispy silver halo, often escaping its perpetual, utilitarian bun, and her hands, gnarled from years of tirelessly scrubbing kennels, mending fences with frayed wire, and comforting terrified, trembling animals, gently stroked the head of a shivering, emaciated German shepherd mix, its ribs painfully visible beneath its matted, patchy fur. "Another one, my dear," she murmured, her voice raspy with fatigue and raw emotion. "Found abandoned near the old Whisperwind quarry, starved, frostbitten, and terrified. We barely have room for him." And with the distemper still active, and the roof leaking directly onto the isolation ward, were stretched thinner than a whisper. The sanctuary was far beyond capacity. Every available space, from the cramped, freezing indoor runs to the muddy, perpetually damp outdoor pens, was crammed with hopeful, yet often gravely ill or deeply traumatized, eyes. Overcrowding meant increased stress, rampant, incurable illness, and an ever-present dread of the next astronomical veterinary bill they couldn't afford. The meager donations, often trickling in from small community bake sales, local car washes, and the occasional compassionate tourist, barely covered basic food and essential medications, let alone the extensive, critical medical care many animals desperately needed for conditions ranging from severe infections to complex bone fractures, or simply a safe, clean, warm place to recover from unimaginable neglect and cruelty. Kaylin, a young, earnest volunteer with an infectious, if somewhat naive, optimism, was hunched over a sputtering laptop in the small, perpetually chilly office, trying desperately to update the sanctuary's ancient, glitchy website and social media page, battling a painfully slow, unreliable satellite internet connection that frequently cut out entirely. "Ms. Reed," he called, his voice strained with frustration, his breath fogging in the cold air. "We have 7 new surrender requests today, a whole litter of puppies found dumped in a cardboard box by the highway exit. And still no word on funding for the permanent roof repair, the new heating system, or that well replacement. The temperatures dropped to 15 degrees last night, it's brutal in Kennel 2, and the dogs are shivering constantly, even with all the blankets we can find." He gestured helplessly towards a stack of mounting bills. Elara sighed, her gaze sweeping over the rows of forlorn creatures, each whimpering or shivering, a silent accusation against the indifference of the world. A young, 3-legged calico kitten, its eyes like luminous amber, watched her, mewing softly from a makeshift bed of old, threadbare blankets. A large, matted Australian Shepherd mix, named Gideon by the volunteers for his surprising resilience despite his horrific injuries, limped towards the fence, his tail wagging weakly, a testament to his enduring, fragile spirit. The staff, a small, dedicated band of heroes, poured every ounce of their being into these animals, working long, often unpaid hours, frequently using their own meager savings for emergency supplies, for extra blankets, for a single, precious bag of specialized kibble. But their boundless passion was battling a losing war against the relentless tide of neglect, overwhelming financial desperation, and the sheer, crushing apathy of a world that seemed to have utterly forgotten these voiceless beings. Emberwood Haven was teetering on the very brink of irreversible closure, a fact that weighed heavily on Elara's heart, a silent, pervasive ache that never truly left her. She knew, deep down, that without a true, unprecedented miracle, Emberwood Haven would soon be forced to make the agonizing decision to turn away animals, consigning them to certain death, or worse, to humanely euthanize healthy ones for the sheer, cruel lack of space, resources, and hope. The thought was a bitter poison in her soul. Lysander couldn't shake the image of the trembling kitten from the news, or the haunting desperation in Elara Reed's eyes. It permeated his dreams, a stark, unwelcome contrast to the sterile perfection of his waking life. The next day, he found himself, uncharacteristically, researching animal shelters. He dismissed the well-funded, glamorous ones, the ones with celebrity patrons and glossy brochures, the ones that felt more like social clubs than places of genuine need. His interest was morbidly, inexplicably, piqued by Emberwood Haven, its website a relic of early internet design, its donate button barely functional, its please raw and unfiltered, reflecting genuine, heartbreaking desperation. He decided, on a whim he couldn't quite explain, a fleeting impulse that defied all logic, to make an anonymous donation, a substantial sum, $250,000, enough to cover their most immediate, critical needs. The well repair, a new temporary roof tarp to keep the snow out, and a large shipment of specialized, high-calorie dog food for the sick, emaciated animals. He instructed Cassandra Thorne to handle the transfer, emphasizing the absolute anonymity and discretion. Days later, a follow-up news report, broadcast nationally, flashed across his enormous penthouse display, Anonymous Angel saves Emberwood Haven from imminent collapse. Local sanctuary receives lifeline donation. The reporter gushed, his voice thick with emotion. Elara Reed, her face streaked with tears, wept openly with profound relief, and Kaylin, beaming, held up a hastily scrawled, "Thank you mystery hero," sign. Lysander felt a strange, fleeting sense of satisfaction. It was a novel sensation, utterly different from the aggressive, adrenaline-fueled thrill of a successful hostile takeover. But it was quickly overshadowed by a gnawing emptiness. The money hadn't fixed him. It was a temporary reprieve for them, a fleeting bandage on a gaping, festering wound, but it didn't feel like a true, personal connection. He needed to see it, touch it, understand it on a deeper level. The abstract concept of charity had become disturbingly tangible, and it had stirred something within him he hadn't known was dormant, a buried flicker of humanity. What small moment has ever transformed your perspective? Sometimes, it's the quietest acts of compassion that ignite the biggest changes. If this story touches your heart, please like this post, subscribe for more inspiring stories, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with friends and family to spread the message of hope and kindness. One late afternoon, Lysander, after a particularly contentious and ultimately losing business meeting in Viridia City, where Valerius Cale had, once again, narrowly outmaneuvered him on a crucial rare earth mineral supply chain acquisition for Vane Conglomerate, felt a surge of frustrated, almost primal, anger. Instead of heading straight to his private jet, he abruptly told Cassandra to cancel his flight. He craved the open road, the raw speed, anything to outrun the bitter echoes of Cale's smug victory. He jumped into his gleaming, obsidian-black Lamborghini Shadow Aventador SVJ. He needed to clear his head, to feel something other than the cold sting of defeat. His advanced satellite navigation system, usually infallible, inexplicably malfunctioned, its screen flickering erratically before dying completely, leaving him stranded on unfamiliar roads. This wasn't just a glitch. A later investigation revealed it was a subtle, targeted cyber attack by Umber Corporation, designed to disorient and isolate him after the Viridia City deal. It was a petty, yet effective, psychological tactic. The winding, unpaved backroads of Lyra County grew narrower, rockier, the dense, humid air clinging to him, dust stinging his eyes and coating the pristine black paint of his supercar. He was miles from any major highway, deep in the desolate, forgotten stretches of the Blackwood Peaks. Annoyed, his temper fraying, he was about to execute a furious, tire-shredding U-turn when a faint, desperate whimpering, almost a mournful howl, caught his ear. It was thin, reedy, like a child's cry, carried on the damp, chilling breeze. His curiosity, unusual for his typically insulated world, compelled him. He followed the sound down an even narrower, almost impassable dirt track, ending abruptly at a rusted, corrugated iron gate, barely visible behind a thicket of overgrown, thorny forest. Peeking through a gap in the fence, he saw it, Emberwood Haven. He recognized the makeshift setup from the news report. His initial reaction was utter disdain, bordering on disgust. What a derelict dump, he muttered, pulling out his encrypted satellite phone, which thankfully still had a signal, to call his personal security detail for immediate extraction. He was about to leave, his finger hovering over the dial button, when his gaze landed on Alara Reed. She was on her knees in a patch of cold, hard mud, painstakingly tending to a small, emaciated dog. It was Gideon, the Australian shepherd, looking even worse than on TV, despite the recent anonymous donation. Gideon's front leg was clearly fractured, twisted at an unnatural angle, and he whimpered with pain as Alara gently cleaned a festering wound, her voice a soft, continuous stream of comforting murmurs. "It's okay, sweet boy. We're here. We won't let you hurt." Her face was streaked with dirt, her worn, patched jacket clinging to her, but her eyes, though tired and etched with profound sorrow, held an unwavering, almost sacred, tenderness that Lysander found profoundly unsettling, a warmth he hadn't seen expressed so purely in years, if ever, outside of a staged corporate event. The raw, unfiltered purity of her compassion was a jarring contrast to his own calculated existence. The memory of Echo, his childhood dog, returned with a surprising, almost painful clarity, a ghost from a simpler, more innocent past. He remembered Echo's trusting eyes, the warmth of his fur, the unspoken loyalty, the small, uncomplicated joy he'd once felt. He remembered the overwhelming ache, the profound sense of loss, when Echo had been hit by a car, an ache he had buried deep beneath layers of ambition, ruthless efficiency, and hardened cynicism, believing emotional detachment was the only path to invincibility. He watched for another long moment, hidden from view by the dense foliage, as Gideon, despite his pain, managed a weak, almost imperceptible lick to Alara's mud-stained hand. He saw the sheer, bone-deep exhaustion in her posture, the silent, relentless battle she fought against overwhelming odds, a fight she was clearly losing. And for the first time in a long time, Lysander Vane felt something akin to shame, a prickle of discomfort, a searing self-reproach in his usually impenetrable self-regard. All his immense wealth, all his carefully constructed luxury, all his power, and here was genuine suffering, genuine, desperate compassion, in a place he wouldn't have given a second thought to, a place that existed light years away from his gilded cage. He thought of his empty penthouse, his fleeting, superficial pleasures, and the stark, painful contrast of Alara Reed's selfless devotion. His small anonymous donation had been a fleeting balm, a mere drop in an ocean of need, not a cure. He knew, with sudden, startling clarity that resonated to his very core, that he needed to do more. He needed to be more. The thought was not a choice, but a sudden, inescapable imperative. He stepped out from behind the thicket of brush, the crunch of gravel under his expensive Italian shoes drawing Alara Reed's startled attention. She looked up, startled, her eyes narrowing slightly at the sight of the perfectly tailored suit, the gleaming black supercar, and the undeniable aura of immense, predatory power that emanated from him. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cautious, tinged with a deep, weary suspicion, a hand instinctively moving to shield Gideon, as if expecting him to be another threat. She dealt with curious onlookers, thrill-seekers, even occasional animal rights activists who meant well but understood little of the daily grind. This man was different. He radiated a cold, efficient energy that unnerved her. Lysander, unaccustomed to such a direct, unawed reception from anyone outside his boardroom, indeed, from almost anyone in his life, cleared his throat, feeling a peculiar dryness. I saw the news report. About your sanctuary. And the anonymous donation. He paused, feeling an uncharacteristic blush creep up his neck, a sensation he hadn't experienced since adolescence, since he was a boy caught in a lie. He pushed past the discomfort. I was the anonymous donor. Lysander Vane. Eleanor Reed's jaw dropped, a single, clean tear tracing a path through the dirt on her cheek. Kalen, who had been emerging from the office with a stack of outdated adoption forms, froze mid-step, the clipboard clattering to the ground with a loud clatter. The silence was thick with profound disbelief, a tangible weight in the dusty air. Gideon whimpered softly, as if sensing the sudden, monumental shift in the atmosphere. The revelation hung heavy, an unexpected, impossible bridge between two utterly disparate worlds, a moment that would forever alter the course of their lives. Lysander Vane didn't sleep that night. The direct, raw encounter with Alara Reed, the profound emotions he witnessed in her eyes, the quiet dignity of their struggle, solidified something deep and fundamental within him. The image of Alara and Gideon, her boundless compassion, the animal's profound suffering, haunted him more persistently than any fluctuating stock price, any pending merger, or any corporate espionage plot ever had. The raw, unadorned empathy he witnessed had pricked something deep within him, a dormant humanity he hadn't known he possessed. It wasn't a weakness, it was a revelation. The next morning, his voice, usually crisp, commanding, and imbued with an unshakable confidence that could sway markets, was unusually subdued, almost tender, when he called Sterling Hayes. "Mr. Hayes," Lysander said, his gaze fixed unseeing on the panoramic view of the Hudson River, the glittering cityscape below, "I need you to prepare a wire transfer. Immediately. $75 million US. There was a stunned, almost comical, silence on the other end of the line. Sterling Hayes, a man who had weathered every outlandish request Lysander could conjure, from purchasing a private island in the Maldives to investing in speculative deep-sea mining, found himself utterly speechless. "Mr. Vane," he stammered, recovering slightly, his voice a strained whisper. "For what acquisition? Another tech giant? A national airline? Are we diversifying into rare animal breeds now, sir? And 75 million? That's a staggering sum. Even for Vane conglomerate. It could be seen as fiscally irresponsible, especially given our current legal challenges with Umbra Corporation. This isn't about alignment, Hayes. This is different. Profoundly so." Lysander paused, searching for the words that suddenly felt inadequate to describe the seismic shift within him, the dawning of a new purpose. "It's not just about the money, Mr. Hayes. It's about what it can do. And what it's doing to me. This is not a charity play, it's a necessary investment." He felt a connection, a stirring of purpose, a pull towards something profoundly meaningful that he never anticipated. He instructed Cassandra Thorne, his sharp-witted and notoriously discreet chief of staff, to handle all the legalities swiftly and with absolute discretion. He anticipated significant resistance, not just from Hayes, but from the board and his shareholders. And, Hayes, Lysander added, a hint of something new, humility. In his voice, make sure they get it all. No hidden fees, no bureaucratic fuss. Just, give them the resources they need. And prepare for some very uncomfortable questions from the board. I want Elias Vance on standby. He was right to anticipate questions. Cassandra Thorne, usually unflappable, looked genuinely perplexed when Lysander presented the directive. "Mr. Vane, $75 million to a small, rural animal sanctuary?" Without extensive due diligence on the organization's long-term financial viability, its leadership strategic capabilities, its future scalability. This is highly unconventional. The board will question the fiscal responsibility of such a large, unvetted disbursement, especially with the ongoing Umbra Corporation litigation and our stock volatility. Lysander met her gaze, unyielding. "Cassandra, my judgment is sound. This is not merely a donation. It's an investment in a different kind of return. Handle the paperwork. I will address the board. Schedule an emergency meeting. I want it done by end of day." The emergency board meeting of Vane Conglomerate was an exceptionally tense affair, held in the opulent, wood-paneled boardroom high above Wall Street. A dozen stony faces, accustomed to discussing multi-billion-dollar mergers and hostile takeovers, stared at Lysander as Sterling Hayes, his voice strained and noticeably trembling, outlined the proposed donation. "Mr. Vane," began Senator Tiberius Thorne, no relation to Cassandra. A stern, gray-haired board member and former governor who controlled a significant block of shares and represented the old guard of Wall Street. "While we appreciate the spirit of philanthropy, our fiduciary duty is to our shareholders. $75 million to an obscure animal sanctuary, without clear strategic benefit or immediate financial returns, seems reckless. Especially given the ongoing competitive pressures from Umbra Corporation and the recent negative publicity surrounding your alleged corporate espionage activities. Senator Thorne leaned forward, his gaze piercing, a silent challenge in his eyes. Are we to believe this is simply a sudden fit of conscience, Lysander? Or a desperate attempt to whitewash your image after the recent scandals? Lysander leaned forward, his usual detached demeanor replaced by an uncharacteristic earnestness that shocked many in the room. His voice, usually cold and calculating, now resonated with a quiet, unwavering conviction. Gentlemen, I understand your concerns. This isn't about traditional ROI. It's not a sudden fit of conscience, Senator, though perhaps it should have been. It's about vision. Vane conglomerate has always been about innovation, about seeing value where others don't. And sometimes, innovation means disrupting our own patterns. This sanctuary, Emberwood Haven, is on the brink. With this investment, we can not only save it but transform it into a national model for animal welfare. Think of the public goodwill, the media attention that isn't about scandal. This is not a handout, it's a strategic move to redefine what a global corporation can stand for, to demonstrate a new kind of leadership. He faced a barrage of skeptical questions, some tinged with thinly veiled accusations and outright hostility. He presented a hastily compiled, yet remarkably detailed, plan for the sanctuary's expansion, drawing on his innate organizational skills and the brief but impactful observation from his visit. He outlined phases of construction, state-of-the-art veterinary infrastructure, widespread community outreach programs, and even a proposed national adoption network, showcasing its potential as a national animal welfare hub, a beacon of hope and a powerful public relations asset. He argued that the positive PR, the renewed trust from a public increasingly wary of corporate greed, would eventually outweigh the initial financial outlay, especially as it contrasted sharply with Umbra Corporation's ruthless, predatory tactics. Reluctantly, after hours of heated debate, with a vote that was far from unanimous, the board, swayed by Lysander's sheer force of will and the veiled threat that he'd simply use his personal fortune, and perhaps even seek to remove dissenting board members through a hostile proxy battle, if they refused, approved the transfer. The resolution passed by the narrowest of margins, leaving a palpable tension, a simmering resentment, in the opulent boardroom. Within 48 hours, the staggering sum landed in Emberwood Haven's barely solvent bank account. Kalen, still reeling from Lysander's appearance, was checking the sanctuary's ancient, sputtering computer, muttering about an IT glitch when he saw the astronomical sum. His jaw dropped so far it nearly hit the dusty keyboard, and he nearly fell off his rickety chair. Ms. Reed. Ms. Reed, you need to see this. It's impossible. The zeros just keep going. Elara Reed, who was patiently coaxing a shy, malnourished border collie to eat from her hand, looked over, wiping her hands on her worn apron. What is it, Kalen? Did we finally get that small grant from the county council for the cooling system? Please tell me we did. The heat is stifling today. Kalen turned the laptop screen to her, his finger trembling as he pointed to the bewildering balance. Elara's eyes widened, then filled with a torrent of tears. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto a rickety stool, fanning herself with a stray piece of paper. Is this real? $75 million. He actually did it, she whispered, disbelief warring with overwhelming, almost paralyzing, relief. She buried her face in her hands, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. Kalen, equally overwhelmed, could only pat her back, tears blurring his own vision. The local community initially reacted with a mixture of profound shock and fervent skepticism. Lysander Vane. The Lysander Vane from New York. The one who owns half of Manhattan's skyline, echoed through dusty diners and small-town grocery stores. Whispers of a cynical publicity stunt, an elaborate tax dodge, or even money laundering spread like brushfire, fueled by the shadowy hand of Umber Corporation, who immediately began planting negative stories in obscure online tabloids. But shock quickly transformed into immense, tearful gratitude as the news, confirmed by national media outlets, spread like wildfire. Tycoon's miracle donation transforms desert sanctuary, screamed headlines. Social media exploded with the story, turning Emberwood Haven into an overnight national sensation, a symbol of hope in a cynical world. Calls poured in, not just of congratulations, but offers of volunteer help from across the country, donations of blankets, high-quality food, and even specialized medical equipment. Lysander Vane, the titan of transactions, had, against all expectations, laid a golden egg of compassion that promised to change everything. His private act had become a public miracle. Lysander, however, found the sudden, intense media attention deeply uncomfortable, preferring to remain in the shadows, a stark contrast to his past self who actively courted attention for his business triumphs. He understood the PR value, but the personal exposure felt raw and intrusive. However, not all reactions were positive. The increased visibility brought immediate, unwelcome scrutiny. Days after the donation, a major national investigative news program, The Sentinel, launched a scathing segment questioning the legitimacy of Emberwood Haven, implying mismanagement and potential fraud, leveraging old, unsubstantiated rumors about past financial struggles and even fabricating minor past infractions. This was clearly another tactical strike by Umber Corporation, designed to discredit Lysander and his newfound charitable endeavors. Elara Reed was forced to conduct an agonizing live interview, defending the sanctuary's integrity against aggressive accusations. Lysander, despite his profound discomfort with the limelight, immediately held a rare, unannounced press conference, not just confirming the enormous donation but also vehemently defending Elara Reed and Emberwood Haven. He provided irrefutable audited financial statements, presented a detailed, transparent operational plan, and openly challenged the Sentinel program's journalistic ethics, threatening a multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit. This aggressive, unyielding defense, coming from a man infamous for his cold detachment, shocked the media and solidified public trust in Elara and the sanctuary, turning the tide against the negative smear campaign and inadvertently enhancing Lysander's own burgeoning reputation as a man of unexpected integrity. It was a calculated risk that paid off, enhancing his image more profoundly than any pre-planned PR stunt could have. The transformation of Emberwood Haven was nothing short of miraculous, a living testament to the profound, almost divine, power of a single, unexpected act of generosity. Within a mere 6 months, the dilapidated logging sheds and ramshackle enclosures were systematically razed and replaced with spacious, climate-controlled kennels, each boasting individual access to lush, green outdoor runs, complete with solar-powered shade structures and filtered splash pools to combat the scorching summer heat. The persistent canine distemper outbreak was finally contained and eradicated thanks to new, meticulously designed isolation units, rigorous sanitation protocols, and the immediate deployment of top veterinary specialists Cassandra Thorne had meticulously sourced through Vane Conglomerate's vast network. A gleaming, state-of-the-art veterinary clinic, equipped with modern surgical suites, advanced digital X-ray machines, and a dedicated recovery ward with round-the-clock monitoring, took shape. The broken artesian well pump was replaced with a robust, sustainable geothermal water system, ensuring a constant supply of fresh, clean water, even during the most severe droughts. A specialized rehabilitation center, complete with hydrotherapy tanks, gentle exercise equipment, and dedicated sensory rooms designed to calm traumatized animals, was built for creatures needing intensive physical therapy and emotional recovery. Comprehensive education programs for responsible pet ownership began to flourish, reaching out to schools and community centers across Lyra County and beyond, aiming to address the root causes of abandonment and neglect. However, the monumental transformation was far from smooth sailing. The initial influx of funds brought its own complex set of headaches, logistical nightmares, and unexpected conflicts. Local contractors, accustomed to small-scale jobs, struggled to meet the accelerated deadlines and the exacting, high standards Lysander demanded. Permits from the county were delayed, sometimes seemingly stalled by inexplicable bureaucratic inertia. A later, deeper investigation revealed subtle, insidious interference from Valerius Cale's local political connections, leveraging his considerable influence to obstruct the sanctuary's progress. Integrating an overwhelming influx of new, eager but largely untrained volunteers alongside the small, established, fiercely protective staff created significant internal friction and resentment. There were heated debates over everything, from the best type of flooring for the new kennels to the specific brand of specialized therapeutic dog food. Some longtime volunteers, fiercely attached to the rustic, family feel of the old, struggling sanctuary, felt alienated by the rapid professionalization and the sudden arrival of corporate oversight, fearing Emberwood would lose its soul. A major incident occurred just 6 weeks into construction. A critical shipment of specialized, sound-dampening insulation for the new feline enclosures, vital for calming nervous cats, was mysteriously diverted to a competitor's project in a distant state, causing a 3-week delay and a significant cost overrun. This was quickly traced back to a rogue logistics company known to have deep, secretive ties with Umbra Corporation. Lysander, instead of merely delegating, personally flew to the supplier's headquarters in Atlanta, a direct confrontation. Leveraging his formidable influence and even subtly threatening to acquire the entire logistics company if the issue wasn't immediately rectified and compensated, he ensured the insulation arrived at Emberwood within 24 hours, delivered by a fleet of private trucks, personally escorted. Then came a devastating, calculated blow. A sophisticated cybersecurity attack, traced to a shadowy, anonymous group of highly skilled black hat hackers, later definitively linked to a shell company owned and operated by Umbra Corporation. Crippled Emberwood Haven's brand new digital adoption portal and wiped out several months of meticulously updated animal records, including critical medical histories, vaccination schedules, and active adoption applications. This was a calculated strike designed not only to undermine the sanctuary's operations and create public chaos but to sever the emotional connections being forged between potential adopters and the animals. Elara Reed was distraught, tears streaming down her face as she faced the ruined data. Kalen, who had poured his heart and countless sleepless nights into building the new system, was utterly devastated, feeling personally responsible. Lysander, drawing on Vane Conglomerate's top-tier cybersecurity team, the Digital Sentinels, immediately dispatched them to Emberwood. He personally oversaw the recovery efforts, working late nights alongside the tech experts, demonstrating a practical, hands-on dedication that astonished Elara and earned him grudging respect from the tech geeks. He also publicly announced an unprecedented multi-million-dollar reward for information leading to the hacker's arrest and conviction, turning the incident into a powerful public rallying cry against malicious cyber attacks on non-profit organizations, further consolidating public support. The atmosphere, despite these persistent challenges and setbacks, crackled with a newfound, resilient hope, a vibrant, almost palpable energy that hummed through every corner of the transformed sanctuary. The shy, emerald-eyed kitten, now named Jade for her luminous green eyes, who used to cower in the darkest corners of her old, cramped cage, now purred loudly, confidently rubbing against visitors' legs, her tiny tail held high like a flag of triumph. She eventually found her forever home with a kind, elderly professor of literature named Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to Marcus Thorne, much to Alexander's amusement. In Santa Monica, California, who adored her playful spirit and quiet affection, sending regular updates of Jade curled up on his antique books. Gideon, the injured Australian Shepherd mix, made a full, astonishing recovery. His fractured leg, once twisted and broken, healed perfectly after extensive surgery and months of rehabilitation, supervised by one of the top orthopedic vets in the state, flown in at Lysander's personal expense. His fur, no longer matted, gleamed with health, and he was adopted by a retired firefighter and his family from Denver, Colorado, who cherished his gentle spirit and quiet strength, sending videos of Gideon frolicking in the snow. His story, and countless others, were shared on Kalen's now viral social media channels, bringing in a steady, overwhelming stream of adopters from all over the country, desperate to give these deserving animals a second chance at life. Among the new arrivals was a particularly challenging, heartbreaking case, a majestic, scarred German Shepherd named Kodiak. Kodiak had been rescued from a severe, brutal dogfighting ring in a neighboring state, his spirit utterly broken, his eyes haunted by profound fear, aggression, and an almost feral wildness. He cowered from human touch, growling whenever anyone approached his kennel, often lunging in blind, desperate panic if cornered. Elara and her team had tried everything, every gentle coaxing, every patient approach, but Kodiak remained utterly unreachable, a silent, trembling testament to the depths of human cruelty. Lysander, during one of his increasingly frequent and prolonged visits, sometimes lasting entire weekends, much to the bewilderment of his corporate staff, observed Kodiak from a distance. The dog's profound, debilitating fear struck him to his core. It mirrored, in a strange, unsettling way, the emotional walls Lysander himself had built over the years, the deep-seated mistrust that had driven his ruthless ambition and isolated him from genuine connection. He found himself inexplicably drawn to Kodiak, seeing in the animal's trauma a reflection of his own buried pain, a project that transcended the financial and touched the deeply personal. He began spending quiet hours simply sitting outside Kodiak's specialized, reinforced kennel, reading reports, working on his laptop, not attempting to touch the dog, just being present, a silent, consistent, non-threatening presence. Days turned into weeks, then months. One afternoon, Kodiak, for the very first time, tentatively sniffed Lysander's outstretched hand. It was a tiny, monumental victory, a delicate breach in the fortress of fear. Lysander felt a surge of exhilaration far more profound, more meaningful, than any billion-dollar business deal had ever given him. He personally sponsored Kodiak's specialized behavioral therapy, hiring an internationally renowned animal behaviorist, Dr. Elias Vance, no relation to Eleanor, ensuring the dog received the best possible, and most patient, care, a bespoke rehabilitation program. Kodiak's slow, arduous journey to trust became a deeply personal project for Lysander, a mirror to his own emerging empathy and profound healing. He began to apply the same strategic, long-term thinking he used in business: patience, consistency, focused resources, unwavering commitment, to animal welfare, realizing these principles held true for life itself. Elara Reed, no longer burdened by the constant, crushing weight of worry and the specter of closure, walked with a visibly lighter step, a spring in her stride. Her face, though still bearing the faint lines etched by years of struggle and selflessness, now held a permanent, radiant smile, a reflection of the boundless joy that now filled Emberwood Haven. "We can finally give them the life they truly deserve," she would often say to Lysander during his visits, her voice choked with emotion, her eyes brimming with grateful tears. The joy and gratitude of the sanctuary staff were palpable, a collective sigh of relief and renewed purpose. They worked tirelessly, but now with the tools, the space, and the hope to truly make a profound difference in every animal's life. The volunteers, once dwindling, swelled in numbers, eager to be a part of this miracle, even the longtime staff grudgingly admitting that the improvements had transformed their daily struggles into a shared mission of boundless possibility. Witnessing such profound change makes one wonder, how can we all contribute to a world where every creature finds care and compassion? What small action can you take to make a big difference? If this story touched your heart, please like this post, subscribe for more inspiring stories, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with friends and family to spread the message of hope and kindness. Lysander Vane's monumental gift was not just a one-time donation, it was a powerful catalyst for enduring, systemic change, rippling far beyond the remote Catskill Mountains. Emberwood Haven became more than just a shelter. It transformed into a national model animal welfare organization, a beacon of hope and innovative care, inspiring similar initiatives across the United States. Its phenomenal success story, prominently featured in national news, ethical business journals, and even documentaries, spurred a crucial national conversation about neglected animal populations, underfunded sanctuaries, and the pervasive, often hidden, issue of animal cruelty. To the astonishment of many, Lysander became increasingly, and authentically, involved. He wasn't just a patron from afar, he was a dedicated, hands-on presence, often arriving unannounced, sleeves rolled up, ready to help. He continued to visit regularly, offering strategic advice, leveraging his formidable network for new partnerships, including securing major discounts on veterinary supplies, advanced medical equipment, and sustainable construction materials. And often, simply spending time, quietly playing with the puppies in the new outdoor runs or observing the rehabilitation process with genuine, almost childlike, fascination. His initial detachment, that cold, analytical distance, had given way to a profound, personal engagement that surprised even himself. He began advocating passionately for stronger animal rights legislation on national platforms, using his immense influence and wealth to push for stricter animal cruelty laws, mandatory spay/neuter programs, and broader public awareness campaigns through massive, national educational initiatives. He even testified before a congressional committee in Washington, D.C. A rare and highly anticipated public appearance that stunned the political world, arguing eloquently and passionately for increased federal funding for animal welfare programs and harsher, more consistent penalties for animal abuse, a stark transformation from the man who once mocked philanthropy. His unexpected generosity had a profound ripple effect across the nation. Other wealthy individuals and corporations, previously hesitant to look beyond their own carefully curated philanthropic circles, began to inquire about local animal charities, seeking to emulate Lysander's impact. A new, powerful philanthropic organization, the Aegis Collective, was formed by prominent business leaders, celebrities, and philanthropists across the country, directly inspired by Lysander's remarkable transformation. Dar. Serafina Vane, his sister, unexpectedly reached out, her voice soft with admiration and genuine affection. "Lysander," she said, her voice filled with emotion during a rare, heartfelt phone call, "I've been following your work with Emberwood. You're building something truly remarkable, brother. More than any star, you're lighting up lives. I'm so proud of you." It was a moment of profound reconciliation, a fragile, deeply meaningful bridge rebuilt, that Lysander hadn't dared to hope for. The Aegis Collective focused on supporting smaller, often overlooked local charities dedicated not just to animal welfare but to broader community upliftment, addressing the root causes of animal abandonment through education, poverty alleviation programs in vulnerable communities, and lobbying for systemic, national change. Lysander's journey inspired a global movement. What steps can you take today to amplify kindness and create a ripple effect of compassion in your community and beyond? If this story touched your heart, please like this post, subscribe for more inspiring stories, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with friends and family to spread the message of hope and kindness. The profound shift in Lysander Vane's life wasn't without its final, dramatic, and almost cataclysmic test. Valerius Cale, still seething from his recent failures to undermine Vane conglomerate and Lysander's rapidly transforming public image, saw Lysander's sustained, deeply personal engagement with Emberwood Haven as the ultimate vulnerability, a distraction that could be exploited to finally dismantle his rival. Umbra Corporation launched a final, desperate, and unprecedented hostile takeover bid for Vane conglomerate, exploiting a severe, unexpected global market downturn triggered by an international crisis, coupled with a highly aggressive, meticulously crafted media campaign designed to portray Lysander as a CEO who had lost his edge, become soft, and was prioritizing sentimental personal whims over shareholder value and corporate responsibility. Octavia Blackwood, Cale's chief strategist, became the public face of this campaign, delivering scathing critiques on every major financial news channel, painting Lysander as a dilettante. Octavia's strategy was multifaceted, brutal, and brilliantly insidious. She not only relied on sophisticated stock manipulation and devastating negative media, she orchestrated an even more vile, personal plot. Through a complex network of shell companies and offshore accounts, Umbra Corporation covertly bought up key parcels of land surrounding Emberwood Haven, then publicly announced plans for a massive, environmentally catastrophic industrial complex right next to the sanctuary, a toxic waste processing facility. This was specifically designed to pollute the area with noise, light, and chemical runoff, making the sanctuary's continued operation untenable, forcing its closure through astronomical legal fees, impossible regulatory hurdles, and widespread public health crises for the animals. This was a direct, personal, and utterly cruel attack on Lysander's newfound passion, designed to force him to choose between his corporate empire and his beloved sanctuary, knowing he couldn't save both. Lysander was faced with a stark, agonizing choice, a crucible moment that would define his legacy: dedicate every fiber of his being, all his time, and all his remaining corporate and personal resources to fighting the takeover and the insidious land grab, potentially sacrificing Emberwood Haven and his newfound purpose, or continue his commitment to the sanctuary, risking the complete, irreversible collapse of his corporate empire and the undoing of all his efforts at Emberwood. The pressure was immense, almost unbearable, threatening to break the man who had weathered so many storms. He convened a final, dramatic, and emotionally charged emergency board meeting. The atmosphere crackled with unbearable tension, the air thick with fear and unspoken recrimination. "Gentlemen," Lysander stated, his voice calm, resolute, amidst the storm of accusations, dire predictions, and calls for his resignation, "I will fight this takeover. And I will fight this land grab. I will not abandon my commitment to Emberwood Haven. This isn't a distraction, it's the core of who I am now. My values have shifted, and Vane conglomerate will shift with them. We will win this fight, and we will do it with integrity and a renewed sense of purpose." He then announced a shocking personal decision that stunned the entire boardroom into stunned silence. He would immediately liquidate all his remaining non-liquid personal assets, his private jet, his racing yacht, his invaluable art collection, his sprawling global real estate portfolio, every single symbol of his past life of excess, not to line his pockets, but to bolster Vane conglomerate's defenses against Umbra Corporation and, crucially, to establish an enormous, irrevocable, and permanent endowment for Emberwood Haven, ensuring its financial future regardless of his corporate battles or future market fluctuations. This unprecedented, self-sacrificing move, sacrificing his entire personal fortune for both his company's survival and his charitable commitment, shattered the cynical facade of the boardroom. It was a clear, unambiguous statement of his absolute priorities, a testament to his profound transformation. The battle with Umbra Corporation was brutal, a prolonged, agonizing war lasting many months, consuming news cycles with its ferocity and the unprecedented personal stakes. But Lysander, armed with a new sense of clarity, unwavering purpose, and a profound, almost spiritual, personal motivation, fought with a strategic brilliance and an emotional conviction that surprised even the cunning Valerius Cale and the ruthless Octavia Blackwood. He rallied shareholders not just with promises of financial growth, but with a compelling, deeply human vision of a company that balanced profit with profound social responsibility, citing Emberwood Haven as the living, thriving proof of this new ethos. He spoke of legacy, not just wealth, but of lasting impact. He worked tirelessly with Cassandra Thorne, Sterling Hayes, and Elias Vance, dissecting Umbra Corporation's every move, anticipating their next strike. He also publicly exposed Octavia Blackwood's sophisticated smear campaign, providing undeniable, forensic evidence of their manipulative tactics to the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and every relevant media outlet, leading to widespread public outrage and significant financial penalties for Umbra. Meanwhile, he marshaled his unparalleled resources against the nefarious land grab. He quietly, masterfully, bought up all key adjacent parcels of land surrounding Emberwood Haven through an intricate web of independent charitable trusts and environmental organizations, effectively boxing Valerius Cale in and rendering his industrial complex plans utterly unfeasible and illegal. He then publicly unveiled his breathtaking counterproposal. Not just a vast, protected wildlife corridor surrounding Emberwood Haven, ensuring the sanctuary's long-term environmental integrity and expanding its ability to rehabilitate endangered wildlife, but a comprehensive bioremediation project to heal the scarred landscape, transforming Cale's malicious, destructive plan into a stunning triumph for conservation, a monument to hope and healing. In the end, vain conglomerate, battered but resilient, fended off the hostile takeover, emerging stronger, more ethically aligned, and irrevocably transformed by its new mission. Valerius Cale and Octavia Blackwood faced multiple, severe investigations, unprecedented financial penalties, and ultimately, devastating legal repercussions for their unethical and illegal business practices. Their once formidable empire crumbled, a testament to the fact that even ruthless ambition could not withstand true purpose. The final judgment saw Valerius Cale sentenced to a substantial term in federal prison for market manipulation, corporate espionage, and environmental sabotage, while Octavia Blackwood, though avoiding prison, was disbarred and faced crippling fines, her career and reputation utterly destroyed. The fall of Umbra Corporation was spectacular, a cautionary tale of greed and ruthlessness, its assets seized and liquidated, a significant portion redirected to a newly established National Fund for Environmental Justice and Animal Welfare, a fund Lysander Vane would discreetly help advise, ensuring transparency and ethical distribution. Lysander Vane had discovered that true fulfillment lay not in what he accumulated, but in what he gave away, in the profound, boundless joy of alleviating suffering and fostering life. His unexpected act of kindness, born from a moment of raw, unexpected vulnerability, had not only changed the lives of countless animals and the dedicated people who cared for them, but it had irrevocably changed him, forging a legacy of compassion far more valuable and enduring than any fortune. He had, at last, polished his gold with purpose, and it shone brighter than ever before, reflecting not just wealth, but genuine human warmth. He often returned to Emberwood Haven, no longer in a Lamborghini, but in a simple, unostentatious SUV, sometimes bringing Cassandra or even Serafina, who now frequently volunteered. He would sit with Kodiak, now a calm, trusting companion who would lean into his touch, resting his head on Lysander's lap, and watched the animals play in the sun, a quiet, peaceful smile on his face. The titan of transactions finally, truly, at peace with himself and his transformed place in the world. His life, once a monument to solitary power, had blossomed into a tapestry of interconnectedness and profound impact, proving that the greatest wealth is measured not in billions, but in the lives touched and the legacies of kindness forged. In summary, this sprawling narrative unveils the extraordinary redemption of a ruthless magnate, whose life-altering decision to pour millions into a beleaguered animal sanctuary ignites a tumultuous cascade of challenges, profound personal revelations, and an enduring legacy of compassion. It's a tale steeped in corporate intrigue, desperate struggles, and the indomitable power of a single act of kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like this post, subscribe for more inspiring stories, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with friends and family to spread the message of hope and kindness.